8. Tiffany Newell. One day in 2016, a woman walked into a bank near Cleveland, Ohio, and handed a note to the teller demanding money. The FBI released surveillance photos of the thief, hoping that someone would come forward and identify her. Her name was Brianna Fluid, and she was just 17 years old when two men named Tiffany Newell and Jeffrey Doss recruited her to commit the robbery. After the photo was released, the pair became worried that she would rat them out. To make sure that didn't happen, Newell shot and killed Brianna. A few days later, Newell confessed to his mother, Tiffany, about the murder. He revealed more details over the following days, and Tiffany overheard Tiffany bragging to his sister about the crime. As a mother with daughters of her own, Tiffany couldn't bear the thought of someone hurting them and getting away with it. She contacted the FBI about her son's suspected involvement and even convinced Tiffany's sister to testify against him. 3 minors who witnessed the murder also testified. Tiffany was convicted on numerous charges, including murder. He tried to appeal his case but failed. His mother's brave decision to turn him in and both Tiffany and Tiffany's sister's willingness to testify undoubtedly helped to put and keep him behind bars, where he belongs. 7. Jorge Avia Torres. In July 2009, police performed a welfare check on a woman named Amanda Snell at a military base residence in Arlington, Virginia, after the 20-year-old Navy intelligence specialist failed to report for duty the night before. They found her dead inside of a closet. An autopsy determined that someone had strangled Snell. Detectives suspected that the killer lived on base, since it would have been difficult for a civilian to get past security. They took a DNA sample, but their search turned up fruitless for months. The following year, 3 women were kidnapped in Arlington. They were held at gunpoint and bound with electrical cords inside their apartment. Their captor took one of the women to a remote area where he abused and choked her. Then he left her to die on the side of the road. All 3 women survived the horrifying ordeal, and they provided authorities with enough information about their attacker and his vehicle to lead to a suspect. Jorge Avia Torres was a soldier who was stationed at the base where Snell was killed. In fact, he lived just 2 doors down from her. Evidence found inside his SUV linked him to the kidnapping, and DNA connected him to Snell's murder. Avia Torres was arrested for his crimes and taken to jail. At a time when it was of utmost importance for him to keep quiet about what he'd done, he bragged to his cellmate, Osama El Attari, about killing Snell. El Attari, who was doing time for serious fraud, went to authorities with this information. He agreed to wear a wire in exchange for a lesser sentence and captured disturbing audio of Avia Torres talking about how he tied Snell up with her laptop cord and choked her to death. Avia Torres was convicted of the murder, and DNA evidence further revealed that he had committed a double homicide in his hometown of Zion, Illinois back in 2005. He was still a teenager when he killed the 2 victims and cut their eyes out of their sockets. In hindsight, it appears as though Avia Torres may have joined the military to evade suspicion. The deranged killer pled guilty to the 2005 murders and was sentenced to death. He appealed the death sentence, but the court upheld it, and he is currently awaiting execution. 6. Twain Gotti. Many rap songs talk about violence, but in most cases, these lyrics don't reflect situations that actually happened, and artists don't expect their words to catch up with them in real life. Back in 2007, 16-year-old Christopher Horton and his friend, 20-year-old Brian Dean, were shot dead on a front porch in Newport News, Virginia. The double homicide went unsolved for years. Finally, in 2013, police received a tip that rapper Twain Gotti Stewart discussed the crime in his song Ride Out. The chilling lyrics, which appeared on his MySpace page in 2009 and on YouTube in 2011, mentioned killing someone on a trap house porch at midnight. This, combined with other clues, pointed toward Twain Gotti as the main suspect. Police charged the then 22-year-old with 2 counts of felony murder, 1 count of unlawfully discharging a firearm, and 2 counts of using a firearm to commit a felony. Investigators believe that Twain Gotti shot his victims after an argument earlier that day. And while they had suspected him of being involved all along, they just didn't have enough evidence to nail him before the tip came in about his self-incriminating song. Twain Gotti was tried as a juvenile because he was a minor when he allegedly committed the murders. He asserted his innocence and managed to avoid a conviction for the double murder charge, but was convicted of multiple other offenses and sentenced to 16 years in prison. He'll be 39 when he gets out of prison, which means he will still probably enjoy several decades of freedom. While his foolish decision to brag is what got him caught in the first place, it's not a bad deal for someone who may have killed 2 people. 5. Blake Fisher. Blake Fisher was the Fish and Game Commissioner for the state of Idaho in late 2018 when he made the mistake of sending trophy hunting photos to at least 100 people from his work email address. The disturbing images featured Fisher and his wife with at least 14 dead animals that they shot and killed during a trip to Namibia. Fisher included captions beneath the pictures, including one that read, "So I shot a whole family of baboons." The heartbreaking image showed the blood-covered victims, including a tiny baboon with its head resting on an adult baboon's chest. Fisher and his wife also killed a giraffe, leopard, impala, antelope, warthog, and more. The photos went viral, sparking widespread outrage among conservationists and animal rights activists. Longtime hunters were also angry, claiming that Fisher's bragging was unethical, and even some of the man's colleagues called on him to resign. Fisher argued that he didn't do anything illegal, and he had a point. But his actions were seen as incredibly distasteful and immoral, especially considering his high-ranking position as a wildlife official. The disgraced trophy hunter eventually bit the bullet and quit his job, but he failed to apologize for his actions in a resignation letter he sent to the Idaho governor. He did, however, admit to using poor judgment, showing poor sportsmanship, and failing to properly respect the animals that he killed. 4. Katie Price. British ex-model Katie Price allegedly made the mistake of driving drunk in 2017 when she was found slumped over and covered in vomit in the back seat of her pink Range Rover after the vehicle crashed into a parked car. Her blood alcohol level was nearly twice the legal limit. Price argued that a friend was driving the Range Rover and had fled the scene after the collision, but she refused to give up the person's name. A judge didn't fully buy the story and deemed Price to be a non-credible witness, but he cleared her of a drunk driving charge, banned her from driving for 3 months, and fined her a few $1,000s for less serious offenses stemming from the incident. Price got off the hook for the most part, despite a witness claiming that they saw Price behind the wheel with her boyfriend in the passenger seat. The ruling was somewhat surprising considering Price's previous history of driving violations, including speeding, running red lights, and driving while talking on her cell phone. She exited the courthouse victoriously pumping her fist into the air and exclaimed, "Brilliant! I thought I was going to get 2 years." She then bragged that she was going to go car shopping. While Price may have avoided the more serious legal consequences she faced, she totally lost in the court of public opinion, which vehemently disapproved of her jubilant behavior. Price was accused of trivializing a serious issue and faced criticism from a mother whose daughter was killed by a drunk driver. People claim that Price got away with a crime because of her celebrity status, and they aren't necessarily wrong. Meanwhile, it appears as though the former model was charged yet again with drinking and driving. This time, it looks like her recklessness has finally caught up with her. Instead of acting cocky, Price pleaded guilty and admitted to taking drugs. She was mandated to rehab and faces possible jail time. 3. Robert Chapman. Just days into the new year, a pro-Trump rally turned deadly when rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol over what they believed was a stolen election. At least 5 people died and 138 police officers were injured while trying to get the insurrection under control. Hundreds of people were arrested in the aftermath of the uprising, but catching them has been a long, drawn-out process for investigation. A man from Putnam County, New York, named Robert Chapman, made their life a little easier after he bragged to a woman he met on Bumble about his participation in the violence. His prospective date was anything but impressed. The woman reportedly responded by telling Chapman that they were not a good match and reported him to the authorities. She showed them the incriminating messages he had sent her about his involvement in the ordeal. Chapman had gone into detail about his actions, telling the woman that he had made it all the way to Statutory Hall. Investigators connected the suspect's claims with police body cam footage from the riot, and the FBI charged Chapman with trespassing and disorderly conduct on government property. And he's not the only protester that got caught by being too open about their alleged crimes. Family, friends, ex-lovers, colleagues, and even internet sleuths have been a big help when it comes to identifying suspects. So much so that the FBI's Washington Field Office Assistant Director, Stephen Danturano, made an announcement urging those who were involved in the insurrection to turn themselves in. He administered a no-nonsense warning, stating, "Even your friends and family are tipping us off. So you might want to consider turning yourself in instead of wondering when we're going to come knocking on your door, because we will." Writing for The Independent, journalist Justin Viejo pointed out that the close connections between the suspects and the people reporting them exemplifies the deep political divide that has come to fracture American society right down to the most intimate and everyday settings. And while we can hope for better days ahead, things only seem to get more polarized as time goes on. 2. Artur Tomowiak. In 2018, 39-year-old Artur Tomowiak made the huge mistake of getting behind the wheel drunk in the English town of Tyldesley. Shortly after, Tomowiak crashed his Mercedes into a Volkswagen Golf, killing a 71-year-old grandmother named Kathleen Brogan and injuring her daughter Jill, who was behind the wheel. He was going 72 miles per hour, 116 kilometers an hour, on a road with a 30 mile per hour, 48 kilometers per hour speed limit. Jill, who was lucky to survive the collision, needed several surgeries to repair damage to her legs and pelvis. Audio footage captured in Tomowiak's car revealed that his passenger, Zygmunt Putek, had repeatedly pleaded with him to slow down before the accident. Tomowiak could be heard telling Putek that he's a better driver when he's had a drink, but he'd had far more than a drink. Earlier that day, Tomowiak had guzzled 2/3 of a bottle of whiskey. He owned up to his actions when interviewed by the police and said that he felt really sorry for what he'd done. Tomowiak pleaded guilty to causing death and a serious injury by dangerous driving. He apologized to the victim's family in court, reassuring them that he was genuinely remorseful for his actions. But sometimes sorry doesn't cut it. It certainly didn't bring back Kathleen Brogan, and it also didn't spare Tomowiak of the 88-month jail sentence he received. He was also banned from driving for nearly a decade. 1. Sierra Hulseth and Aaron Guerrero. 16-year-old Sierra Hulseth and her 18-year-old boyfriend, Aaron Guerrero, thought they were in love, but Sierra's father, Daniel, had forbidden them from seeing each other. They were determined to be together, and they saw killing Daniel as their only choice for making it happen. In April of this year, Daniel's body was found stabbed and dismembered in his home, which had been set on fire. Family members had trouble reaching Sierra, and soon enough, the teen and her boyfriend became the prime suspects in Daniel's murder. Surveillance footage showed the pair buying bleach, lighter fluid, gloves, and a circular saw in the days leading up to the crime. The couple also recorded videos for their YouTube channel immediately after the killing, bragging about how they had murdered and attempted to dismember Daniel, and saying it was worth it. After mentioning their heinous crime, the pair boasted about how they'd had lots of sex that day, as if their horrific actions came secondary to their selfish enjoyment. They had fled the immediate area in Daniel Hulseth's car, and authorities quickly caught up with them in Salt Lake City, Utah. The young lovers' vision of a picture-perfect escape didn't last very long, and they will likely pay lifelong consequences for it. Sierra was charged as an adult, despite being just 16 years old. She was spared the death penalty, but it's a realistic prospect for Guerrero, who was an adult when the murder happened. At last update, the teens pleaded not guilty to the crime, but the evidence is stacked quite visibly against them, thanks especially to their recorded admissions to the murder. 10. Coke and Mentos Challenge. Have you ever thought to yourself what could go wrong before doing something stupid? Don't lie. You know you have. Well, those that can admit it can most likely also admit that they had second thoughts before doing the stupid thing they did. Take, for example, these guys who followed the legendary internet trend of mixing Coca-Cola with Mentos. In May 2011, two men in New Jersey posted a video of them doing the popular internet challenge on their YouTube channel, Bruce Bauman. This bizarre and fun challenge actually started a while back in 2006, but it's still going strong to this day. So strong, in fact, that their video got over 2 million views. And here's why. The two guys, Bruce and his friend, decided to do the challenge on a rainy day outside of a tennis court. They slammed down the bottle of Coke with Mentos in it. It was supposed to shoot up towards the sky as it expanded, but that didn't happen. Instead, the bottle launched towards the camera Bruce was holding. Basically, the experiment totally backfired. Now, the mixture of Coke and Mentos isn't harmful by its own means, but a solid object launching towards you at about 20 miles per hour, yeah, that can hurt. We assume Bruce suffered only minor injuries, like a bruise or two, depending on where it hit. We hope it didn't get him in the wrong place. 9. Dry Scooping Challenge. Have you ever heard of dry scooping? Those of you who aren't gym junkies might not know, but let us enlighten you about it. Dry scooping refers to the term of eating a scoop of pre-workout powder in its purest form, straight out of the container. Now, some people argue that this is safe, but it is in fact extremely dangerous, and one woman found out the hard way. In 2021, the Dry Scooping Challenge went viral, which is an offspring of the 2013 Cinnamon Powder Challenge, which, unbeknownst to everyone, might be one of the more deadly challenges that might have ever trended. It definitely led to a lot of stomachs being upset with just a simple swallow of powder. Similarly, the Dry Scooping Challenge does not disappoint. In April of 2021, 20-year-old Brittany Portillo suffered a heart attack after trying the challenge. According to Miss Portillo, who posted her experience on TikTok, She took a nutritional supplement for her gym workout. After a while, she started feeling nauseous. The nausea lasted all day and into the next. When she showed up for work the day after, she started experiencing all the things a person would experience right before cardiac arrest. Apparently, if she hadn't gone to the hospital in time, she would have lost her life. Thankfully, she survived, and after sharing her experience, fewer and fewer people tried the challenge. 8. Kiki Challenge. Kiki, do you love me? Are we riding? Say you'll never leave from beside me. Okay, we all know the lyrics. In 2018, Drake released his musical masterpiece, In My Feelings, and people went absolutely nuts over it. Not only are the lyrics super catchy and stuck in your head for days, the dance moves are too, aka the Kiki Challenge. The Kiki Challenge is, whenever you hear the song, wherever you are, you're supposed to drop what you're doing and bust out the dance. Wait a minute, wherever you are? Yes. Wherever? Even while driving? Does that sound a little dangerous to you? Because it sounds super dangerous to us. And that's exactly how the Kiki Challenge took a turn for the worst. Unfortunately for 18-year-old Anna Worden from Iowa, an attempt to do the dance challenge left her physically impaired. The last thing I remember was opening the door, so apparently I got out and tripped and fell and hit my head, she said in an interview. The hit left Anna unconscious, and she woke up in the ICU hours later. Investigations revealed that Anna had suffered bleeding from her brain from a fractured skull and blood clots in her ears. Anna, who recently graduated from Pleasant Valley High School, has always loved dancing and thought the little stunt would be fun. Through her story, the teen wants to share her experience of going from being a graceful dancer to someone who is now relearning how to walk. Be more careful about the challenges and fads that you see are going around. It may seem fun and it may seem like it's easy, but at the same time they could be so dangerous, she said at the time of her discharge from the hospital. Anna's journey to recovery has just begun. She had to take several physical therapy sessions to regain her legs' lost movement and strength. Anna's story is an excellent example of how social media challenges may seem fun, but its consequences may put your life in danger. 7. Corn on a drill. Corn. It's a staple food. You can eat it with butter, boil it, cook it up with cheese or sugar. It can be salty or sweet. You can add it to mashed potatoes or whatever you like. However, there is one way that you should never eat it, and that's on the cob, spinning on an electric drill. Believe it or not, eating corn in this dangerous way became super popular among internet conquistadors. It was 2012 when the new craze took over netizens. The Corn on a Drill Challenge. You eat the corn as fast as you can while it's spinning on an electric drill. Sound dumb? Absolutely. In May 2020, singer and songwriter Jason Derulo tried the challenge out for himself. He posted a video of him doing it too. Have you seen it? In the video he says, "Have you guys seen this?" holding up the corn on the drill. "I've always wanted to try this." Why, Jason? Why? He lets the corn spin for about 3 seconds, chomping away, and then he says, "Ouch!" He lowers the drill and reveals his bloody mouth and top teeth, all of which are chipped. Well, Jason's video actually turned out to be a prank, but boy did he fool us. On the other hand, a Chinese woman who tried out the challenge got her hair stuck in the drill as it was spinning and it ripped out. That sounds really painful. Our heart goes out to her. We hope she grew her hair back, and some brains, too. 6. Licking public toilets. Licking is how we taste stuff, letting the flavor flood into our mouths and gracefully to let our bodies know if we like it. Okay, that sounds weird. But anyway, unfortunately, that habit was tainted when the licking toilet seat challenge went viral. Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like, and it's disgusting. In March of 2020, a famous musical singer named Ava Louise filmed herself licking a toilet seat to challenge coronavirus, which was still fairly new back then. Soon after Miss Louise did it, tons of people started jumping on the bandwagon, specifically those who were opposed to the validity of the uprising pandemic. That is, until later that same month, a 21-year-old TikToker from California who's going by the username of Lars and Gay Sean Mendez posted a video of him licking a public toilet seat. Not long after, Lars posted a tweet saying, "I tested positive for COVID." And since then, his official Twitter account has been banned. Any updates from Lars have been cut off, though we do hope he's okay. Despite this, the nasty trend continued for quite some time. But seriously, who does something like that? These are some weird times we're living in, people. Would you ever do something like that? Do you know anyone that has? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 5. The Tripping Challenge, or the Skull Breaker Challenge. In 2019, a challenge called the Skull Breaker Challenge spread like wildfire all over the internet. It's a challenge involving 3 people lining up horizontally. However, the person in the middle is unaware of the challenge. The 2 people on the side would then jump first, which would make the middle person jump. And once the middle person jumps, the 2 trip the person midair. Unfortunately, as dangerous as it sounds, many people, mostly minors, started doing this, tripping people, watching them fall, and laughing at them. Sounds kind of mean if you ask us, not to mention dangerous. A 16-year-old girl in Brazil was the victim of this internet challenge. When her friends tripped her, she hit her head hard on the ground. Anyone who hits their head like that can suffer anything from a concussion to fractures and intracranial hemorrhage, permanent brain damage, or even death. She was taken to the hospital, but sadly she passed away from her injuries. Thankfully, all videos from the challenge have since been removed from almost all platforms. 4. Planking Challenge. Remember in 2011 when the planking challenge took over the world? People were taking pictures stiff as a board in all kinds of precarious spots and posting them online. Honestly, it took some real core strength to keep up with this trend. Have you tried it? Now, the planking challenge itself isn't all that dangerous, as it actually turned out to be a meme and quite a fun one at that. Lying face down on anything from grills to office tables, it can be pretty hilarious. Well, it was, until it wasn't. In May 2011, 20-year-old actor Acton Beale was at a party with some friends. One of his pals was planking on stuff, and he thought he'd join in. He decided to turn it up a notch by planking on the balcony railing. It would have been fine on the first floor, but they were on the 7th floor of the building. Acton lost his balance and fell to the ground. He died instantly. Soon after, Australian police, who were afraid of the increasing popularity of the challenge, banned planking in public. If you were caught doing the challenge, you could be slapped with a huge fine and even arrested. This is serious stuff. 3. Benadryl Challenge. Did you know taking too much Benadryl can kill you? Well, it absolutely can. Children and teens are participating in a new social media trend by intentionally overdosing on the over-the-counter antihistamine. The situation has parents and officials at the Food and Drug Administration concerned enough that they issued a warning against the serious problems that can occur if you take too much Benadryl. In August 2020 in Oklahoma, a young girl named Chloe Marie Phillips overdosed on Benadryl after taking part in the challenge. As stated, Chloe stumbled upon a video from an influencer about Benadryl's effects, and she was enticed to try this. However, her frail young body was unable to handle the dosage she took, leading to her early death. Her family blamed the internet for her death. She's not the only case, though. There's also a 14-year-old girl who was subjected to comatose condition after taking 14 pills. She's currently recovering as of this moment. Now, hopefully, this would be quite a clear sign that being an influencer means having the power of influence, and power always means responsibility. This should serve as a lesson to anyone to not try anything sketchy on the internet. 2. Bird Box Challenge. Ever heard the phrase, keep your eyes on the road? We sure have. Millions of times, from our driving instructor, our parents, friends, pretty much everyone knows this. Unfortunately, this saying was ignored in 2018 when the movie Bird Box, a movie about blindfolding yourself to not see the monster, created a trend called, with a hashtag, Bird Box Challenge. You would have guessed by now that recreating such a scene would be funny sometimes, but only when it's done in a safe place. This teenager, though, seemed to have taken literal inspiration from the movie. In January 2019 in Layton, Utah, a 17-year-old driver and her 16-year-old passenger decided to join in on the Bird Box Challenge. The only problem being they were driving. Allegedly, the two started talking about the Bird Box Challenge while in the car, and eventually thought about trying it out mid-drive. Obviously, the girls aren't the sharpest tools in the shed, so the driver put her beanie down to cover her eyes, and as a result, she crashed into another car, causing grievous damage to both the car's exteriors. Thankfully, everyone was safe, but seriously, what the heck? 1. The Blue Whale Challenge. A family in Texas says their teenage son killed himself trying an internet challenge known as Blue Whale. 15-year-old Isaiah Gonzalez took his life on a Saturday morning in San Antonio. His father warned parents to be aware of their children's online activities. In November of 2015, a girl named Rina Palenkova took a selfie and posted it online with the caption, Naya Bye. After posting it, she took her own life. Police and family were left baffled by this, as there was no way that Rina would commit suicide. But after checking Rina's phone, they learned that she had been part of an online group that involved topics about suicide and blue whales. It was later in May of 2016 that it was found out to be a game created by so-called curators. The curators would assign a list of gruesome tasks to be completed to their online chat members, the final task of which was to commit suicide. The person responsible for starting the sick challenge was caught in November 2016. A man named Philip Budeikin, a former psychology student. He admitted to being guilty of influencing people to kill themselves, and managed to contact his targets through his 2013 game that had his name and phone number attached to it. In the end, he was charged with 2 counts, but felt no remorse for the actions he had done.
Number 8. Cheryl Lambos and Agostopoulos. Caroline Crouch was just 20 years old when someone strangled her to death in her bedroom and left her 11-month-old baby Lydia laying beside her. The young woman's husband, 33-year-old helicopter pilot Cheryl Lambos, Babis, and Agostopoulos, claimed that a gang of violent Albanian criminals had barged into their home in Athens and committed the crime. He said that they tied him up and held a gun to Lydia's head while trying to force Caroline to reveal where the couple had $54,000 worth of cash and jewelry hidden. When she refused to tell them, they killed her. The supposed burglars also drowned the family's puppy and suspended the dog's body from a railing. There are conflicting versions of the story, probably because it isn't true. The investigation continuously hit dead ends for the first month or so following Caroline's murder. The police finally got a break when they analyzed the data from her smartwatch and realized that her heart stopped beating at a different time than her husband had specified in his harrowing account of the ordeal. The data showed that Caroline fought for her life for a good 10 minutes before she took her last breath. Detectives also found that Babis had been using his phone at a time when he claimed to have been tied up. And Agostopoulos admitted that he had killed Caroline in a fit of rage. He left Lydia beside his dead wife to make the scene look more believable. In other words, like something a loving husband and father would never do. Babis killed a puppy simply to make it look as if a group of truly hardened, heartless gangsters had been inside the home. It later came to light that the couple had a long history of problems and had been going to counseling for their issues. Babis claimed that Caroline was mentally ill to the point of being dangerous, implying that he killed her for the sake of protecting Lydia from her. Activists claim that this is a good example of how domestic violence victims are often overlooked or even vilified, even when it's crystal clear that they were truly the victim. Babis apologized for killing Caroline and is currently awaiting sentencing. Number 7. Frank Rapoli Jr. Frank Rapoli Jr. was already married when he met his future wife, Brenda, during the 80s. He failed to mention this to Brenda, but she found out and made him promise to get a divorce. Frank kept his word, and the two were married in 1986. The couple owned a nice home in New Jersey, where they occasionally entertained guests. Brenda's friends noticed that Frank had a bit of a controlling side. He never helped out around the house and expected to be waited on. At first, Brenda chalked her husband's behavior up to old-fashioned values, but she soon confided in her friends that Frank bossed her around to extremes. He was on her case constantly about doing housework properly. Frank also struggled with insomnia and made Brenda read to him late into the night and then drive him to work in the morning. The routine was exhausting, but she stayed with him, and in 1992, they had a daughter named Sarah. Frank became increasingly violent, to the point where he openly brought his mistress around Brenda, and she accepted the affair because she felt she had no other choice. She finally left her husband in 1999. Brenda filed for divorce and won full custody of Sarah, despite Frank's repeated threats to ruin her reputation and life. One day, she went to retrieve some of her things from the couple's home. While she was there, Frank shot her to death. He pled guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Sarah was raised by her grandparents. She didn't know much about what happened between her mom and dad until she got old enough to start digging for answers. While going through her mom's belongings, she found a chilling letter that Brenda wrote a year before she died, predicting that Frank would murder her. When Sarah was 15 years old, Frank told her that Brenda deserved to die. She never spoke to him again, even after he was released from prison in 2016. Sarah recently told her shocking story for the first time on the ID channel series Love, Honor, and Betray. Number 6. Tiger Woods. Right as his career peaked in 2009, pro golfer Tiger Woods found himself at the center of a historic scandal that's still frequently talked about today. News broke of his extramarital affair with New York nightclub hostess Rachel Uchitel. Within days, another woman revealed that she was also sleeping with Woods behind his wife, Ellen Nordegren's back. But this was just the beginning. More women came forward in the following weeks, and it eventually became apparent that Woods had as many as 120 mistresses throughout his 5-year marriage. Ellen divorced the disgraced athlete, whose career took a hard hit as he lost lucrative partnerships with major brands and found himself in the spotlight more for his dirty deeds than his talent. Woods admitted that he had a problem and went to rehab for sex addiction. Things got better, but his recklessness once again made headlines in 2017 when he was arrested for driving under the influence. He returned to rehab, this time for his addiction to prescription painkillers. Woods made an impressive comeback, and until relatively recently, it even seemed like he was doing better than ever. Last year, the press reported that he and his ex-wife were getting along and co-parenting their children peacefully, and that Woods had even started dating again, without cheating, supposedly. Not long after that, however, he crashed his car while going 86 miles per hour in a 45 mile per hour zone. The circumstances surrounding the accident are largely shrouded in mystery. Woods was severely injured and is still healing, and it's unknown whether he will return to professional golf. Either way, at the end of the day, he'll inevitably go down in history as one of the greatest golfers of all time, but also for his infidelity and the trail of self-destruction that ensued. Do you think Tiger Woods really cleaned up his act? Let us know what you think in the comments down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Michael Mastromarino. From the outside looking in, Michael and Barbara Mastro-Marino had the picture-perfect marriage. As a highly successful New York City-based maxillofacial surgeon, Michael could afford to provide his wife and kids with a privileged lifestyle, including vacations and a lavish home. But he became heavily addicted to painkillers, and it became impossible for his colleagues to ignore. Michael's addiction started to destroy his marriage and home life. When push came to shove, he went to rehab and straightened his life out. Mastro-Marino lost his license to practice dentistry, but he still needed to support his family, and he needed to do it in a place where he couldn't easily access drugs and risk relapsing. He obtained his tissue harvesting license and started the Biomedical Tissue Services (BTS) company, which harvested human body parts. Normally, this is legal, but greed overcame Michael, and he began stealing body parts from corpses, paying funeral homes $1,000 per body, and forging the consent forms to pass the materials off as legal. He even harvested tissue from people who had died from diseases like HIV and cancer, writing on the paperwork that they had passed away from natural causes. Barbara thought that their lives were back on track after Michael's rehab stint. She didn't know that Michael was running his business illegally. While investigating a funeral home in 2005, detectives found a secret room filled with surgical equipment. The probe led them to Mastro-Marino, who was convicted of body stealing. He died in prison in 2013. Barbara admitted that she had ignored warning signs about Michael's true character. Perhaps she could have spared herself a lot of grief, but she's not responsible for Michael's actions, and in some ways, she too is a victim. Number 4. Stephen Trantel. Stephen Trantel was a successful Wall Street trader who could afford some of the finer things in life. He lived with his wife Jean and their children in the Long Island suburb of Rockville Center, where it appeared as though they had achieved the American dream. Trantel went out of his way to uphold the family's upscale image, even after he lost his job following the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. He left the house in a suit every morning so that Jean would think he was going to work, and she fell for it. But she did notice some things that were off. Stephen wasn't taking good care of himself. He always seemed distracted, and he had grown unusually short-tempered. It also struck Jean as odd when the couple went out for their birthday and Stephen paid for everything with cash. Unaware that they had any financial problems, she became even more concerned when the couple fell behind on their mortgage. Jean finally learned the truth about Stephen when he was arrested for robbing banks throughout Long Island. He even had a nickname, the Long Island Bank Robber. By the time he was caught, Stephen had committed 10 robberies, accumulating over $60,000 in cash. He insisted to Jean that he was innocent, but she eventually got him to confess the truth to her. Stephen took a plea bargain and served a 9-year prison sentence. In the meantime, Jean divorced him. He was released in 2012 and appears to be making an honest living as a restaurant manager. 3. Massimo Moringi. A lot of people want out of their marriage, but don't see divorce as a realistic possibility for one reason or another. And sometimes it leads to desperate measures. Take, for example, Massimo Moringi, a 54-year-old Massachusetts man who tried hiring a hitman to murder his wife. Moringi was reportedly angry at his spouse for getting a restraining order against him and decided that she needed to pay for it with her life. He asked someone he knew to help him find a contract killer, and the person reported Moringi to the police. Federal agents got involved and had the concerned Samaritan introduce Moringi to an undercover officer posing as a hitman. The scorned husband provided the undercover cop with a photo of his wife and where she lived, and he explained how to avoid being captured on surveillance footage at the residence. He also made a $1,500 down payment and urged the agent in disguise that the sooner they killed his wife, the sooner he could pay the balance upon the agreed-upon amount of $10,000. Moringi asked the supposed hitman to carry out the murder at a time when the couple's kids were with him. Murder-for-hire plots come with heavy legal consequences. Under federal law, if Moringi is found guilty, he faces up to 10 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. It's a heavy price to pay, in both time and money, compared to what it would have cost him to just get a divorce. Number 2. Gerard Pepin. Divorced single mom Deborah Jones met Gerard Pepin in 2004 while she was living in Skowhegan, Maine. She was instantly smitten. They both worked in the mental health field and had a passion for helping people. It seemed like a perfect fit, so it didn't scare Deborah off to learn that Gerard was a recovering alcoholic. In fact, she appreciated his honesty and assumed that it was customary for him to tell the truth. Unfortunately, she couldn't have been more wrong. The couple eventually moved to Florida and got married. Deborah loved living in Florida and was thrilled about the marriage, so she overlooked it when Gerard broke his 16-year sobriety and ordered a beer on their honeymoon. It would soon be the least of her worries anyway. Gerard got a job with the Salvation Army's drug treatment program. One day he came home from work, claiming that he was being accused of having sexual encounters with a client. He denied it to the investigators, but tried less hard to keep it hidden from Deborah. She moved back to Maine and filed for divorce. In the meantime, she received a phone call from one of Gerard's former clients, who claimed that he had blackmailed her into performing sexual favors. Deborah made it her mission to help police put Gerard behind bars. By then, he had started calling her on the phone periodically to vent about his problems. Deborah pretended to care and used it as a platform to get him to admit to some of his crimes. Gerard was eventually arrested, but he couldn't bear the thought of doing prison time. While out on bail, he and his girlfriend made a suicide pact, and he deliberately crashed his car. Things didn't go as planned. Gerard's girlfriend died in the crash, but he survived, and was now facing even more charges and a much higher chance of doing time. He's serving a 20-year prison sentence, and the world is safe from his predatory behavior, thanks to Deborah's determination to bring him to justice. Number 1. Joey Bodafuco. Amy Fisher was just 16 years old when she began having an affair with Joey Bodafuco, a married mechanic in his 30s. Joey worked at an auto body shop in Belmore, Long Island. They secretly saw each other for a year and a half before Bodafuco reportedly decided to end the relationship. But Amy couldn't let it go. She thought she could keep Joey in her life by eliminating his wife, Mary Jo, from the equation. On May 19, 1992, the troubled teen showed up at the Bodafuco household while Joey was at work and his kids were at school. Mary Jo answered the door, and after a short conversation, Amy pulled out a gun and shot her secret lover's wife in the head. Miraculously, Mary Jo survived. Amy, dubbed the Long Island Lolita by the local press, took a plea deal and served 7 years in prison. During her trial, her defense lawyer argued that Bodafuco had coerced the impressionable adolescent to shoot his wife. Joey was never charged in relation to the crime, but served a 4-month prison sentence for statutory rape. Amy finally took responsibility for her actions at a parole hearing, which ultimately secured her freedom. But Joey's reckless decision to sleep with a teenager nearly killed his wife, who later divorced him and put his family through years of needless suffering. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn more about some marriages gone horribly wrong, let me know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe. I'll see you next time.